Hello and welcome to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Chris and I am finally back, guys. So sorry it's been a couple of weeks. I was usually getting pretty good at this whole getting on the weekly bandwagon, but life has definitely most certainly got in the way of trying to produce some Supercoach content. We just recorded the main pod, so do check that out. But I am obviously wanting to do my individual stuff, but just haven't had the time. So I do apologize. Um, do check us out on all the major podcast platforms. On YouTube, of course, search for Supercoach Insider. You can check us out on Twitter at SC Insider 100, on SoundCloud, Stitcher, you name it, all of the above. Big shout out to our sponsor, Splash Vodka, for keeping us there, and also basically to everyone that has been supporting the channel. We've had some really good months. It's been really building on YouTube, and of course our podcast is bigger than it ever has been as well. So the community is really getting behind us, and we obviously thank every single one of you for listening in and paying attention. But without further ado, let's go through it. So this week I had a bit of a score. I'll do have to catch up in a few weeks. I had 1952 as my score. Not terrible, but not amazing. So I'll go through a couple of things of what's happened in the last few weeks. So with the Sicily out, I decided to hold. Now, last week I managed to get 18, but my 18th player was Jack Buller. Right, so I was basically scraping the barrel for guys. I ended up only scoring. Let me have a look at where can we get. Let's go to history. Um, I think we only had. I didn't score too well. Here we go, history. All right. So last week we had a score of 1950 as well. So I actually scored more this week, um, which is a bit unfortunate. So yeah, last week I actually dropped rank quite considerably, and you can see here from the start of the buy. So buy started in round 12. So after the round 12 buy, I actually went down to 601. I gained ground, and I gained ground in round 13 as well, and then went back up out to just past the 1,000. So not too bad. So if I'm pretty much I've been around this mark, so in this sort of logjam all season, pretty much since round two, round two and three, got right up to uh, yeah around about the 1,000 mark. Not too upset, but um, lacking trades now moving forward, and we'll show you what we've done with the team. So I ended up holding Sicily, and my long-term plan was to get in the 23rd premium to be able to cover him. I also decided that I wanted to hold Briggs. So initially I went into the buys being like, okay, I'm going to trade Briggs and Ford in round 13. That's how I'll get to my 18th player. It'll all be good. What ended up happening was with Sicily going down, that really just threw a spanner in the mix. Now I could have obviously traded Sicily to say a Lloyd or someone like that, but they're all just subpar defender premiums, and I didn't want to be stuck having a guy like Lloyd or a guy even like Ryan, even though Ryan's actually come good, on my pine over those weeks. So I decided to hold him and to trade around him, and also hold Weddle. So what ended up happening was all I really and I traded in Buller with the hope that he would play two games. Um, it would have been nice if he played against West Coast with that absolute demolishing. He would have scored half decent, but unfortunately just couldn't get him on the park. Probably didn't deserve to be there after that first performance where he was kind of thrown into the Lions' den. He would have been my 17th. I originally had planned to go O'Sheen Mullen, which would have been one player there, and then another premium. Also, I could have flipped, say, a Wines, but then he's sort of come good. And because of the lack of trades that I've had, I've sort of just had to make the decision that round 15 was going to be, even though it would be a bad week for me, it probably wouldn't have been that bad overall in the scheme of things, considering that the guys that I would have brought in would going to be subpar and would have made up the points. So I knew that I was going in for a loss. Now, what I didn't know was that I'm really glad that I didn't just trade in these rookies, because all of the rookies went really bad. So anyone that I would have traded in outside of Sheldrick has gone absolutely terrible. So guys like Dev Rob, obviously not going well. I think Windhager only got a 50. Marich only got actually 16 points. So yeah, that was the other option. I could have gone Marich or Buller. Went with Buller. So the guys that I was looking at getting in, the only other one was Harry Harrison. I probably wouldn't have brought him in because I don't believe his job security is great. And look, he might actually get a couple more games. He played half decent. Melican, so Melican went and got himself 21. Would have obviously helped for the first week, but that extra 70k I really needed to be able to set up my team, so it didn't really work. So anyway, I looked at it. I was going to suffer outside of trading away Sicily. I didn't really want to do that because I didn't like the options that it left me with. And so now we've left in this situation. So I've traded out the goal of my team, and what I'm trying to do here is I'm actually trying to basically get to a point where I'm set up as a bit of a POD team. Now, the reason for that is because I just don't have the high end premiums that everybody else does. You know, I don't have the sort of Clary or the Petrarca or something like that. I don't have the Butters in the forward line. I don't have the Tim English. So there's guys that I don't have that are going to hurt me long term. So my way to try and combat them is to essentially hit and hope. Hope that Matt Rao comes good and goes say 105 to 110. Hope that Green comes good. Hope that Wines can go. He's actually averaging, I think I worked out he's averaging about 105.6 or something like that over his 4 weeks that I've owned him. If he can do that as an MA, that'd be absolutely fantastic. Walsh, can he come back to a 110 average? If these guys do come out, one that we've already had success on is Ben Keys. He's come in and he's averaged basically 110 over 4 weeks. Darcy Cameron we brought in this week, so he's one that came in 107 straight off the bat. So my team is good enough to make a run, but it is going to depend on a few things falling our way. And I've got to make a couple of trades to obviously fix it. Now, the other one that I brought in last week was Chris Burgess. So there was a chance that he was going to play or be the sub. He's actually the second leading goal kicker in the VFL this year. So he's only one goal behind the leader. And so he had coming off a 5 goal haul the week before. There was every chance that he would get named, and he just wasn't, unfortunately. They do have depth in that forward line, so he's probably competing with Casbolt for that sort of forward ruck position. They need an injury really to open that up, or that Casbolt is relinquished to the twos and Burjo comes in, which is a chance. So I ended up paying up a little bit for him instead of getting the 102k rookie that I could have got instead. But hopefully that serves me good in the long term. So I need to get in two guys. I've got 108k. How am I generating this cash? Well, obviously we already have the cash generated. So I technically have 21 premiums. Let's still settle all these. I'll keep Sicily on the pine so we can work out what to do with defense. So let's put Walshy back on into the midfield. So I'm going to keep Johnson. He's obviously come off a 99. He suffered a corky, but he's going to be some good midfield cover or at least some cover over the back end of the season. I think he gets more and more game time. What to do with Briggs and Gorn, etc. We'll go through that. Let's put Taranto on the field for Buller. So 6 forwards. Outside of Butters, I don't think I could really do much better. From these defenders, these 5 defenders are 5 of the 6 top averaging defenders. I think the one in the middle is Luke Ryan, but again, not interested based on his 5-round average. It was very, very low. I have 4 of the top mids, and then it sort of drops off. These guys are all sort of 105-ish at the moment, so we'll have to see how that plays out. So I have decided that I will keep Briggs, and that's part of the reason why. And look, obviously I held Gorn. He was lucky to score 92. Again, another game where he sort of got bailed out in the end. In the last minute, he had an intercept mark, an effective long kick, outside 50, hit out to advantage that took his score from 80 to 92 in the last minute of the game. He was very lucky to score that 92, but I obviously held him over Briggs for this week to get him on field for scoring, but he's gone. So let's firstly go out with him. And obviously the one that's maxed out with cash is Weddle that I need to try and take advantage of. So we've got 963. Now, obviously I've got Sicily here. I need to work out a way to cover him. And so first things first is defender to bring in. I'm actually looking at Dan Houston. Now, I went through my thoughts on Dan Houston on the pod. But basically it's like this. It's between Houston and Doherty. Houston's only missed 5 games in 6 years. So obviously in terms of reliability and body, he's a winner. He's averaging slightly more. He's coming off a big 140 plus game. I think he went 147, I believe. Role a bit more defined. Port a second on the ladder. Whereas Doherty, body unreliable, role undetermined. Yes, he can score, and he's always been shown that he can score, which is good. But he's actually averaging slightly less, and there's no guarantee that Carlton even make the 8. And there's a potential that towards the end of the season they just go, nope, we're not even going to entertain this idea. We're going to put you on ice now, and you miss the last 3 games or whatever it may be. There is that potential that sort of scares me. That's not going to happen with Houston. So that's the first thing. All right, now obviously 423k, and I've flagged this for weeks and weeks and weeks out. In my opinion, the guy that I can bring into my team who can really be that 23rd player and cover Sicily at the moment is obviously going to be Himmelberg. So in order to do that, we need to switch around some of the team. So I can bring Himmelberg straight into this position here because he's forward mid, and that is obviously why I brought in Chris Burgess. Forward planning in order to be able to switch this around. So if I leaves me with about 27k left, and I go Gorn out and Himmelberg out for Gorn and Gorn and Weddle out and Himmelberg and Houston in. Yeah, I know I only have one trade. You don't have to go on about it. I'm obviously risking it for the biscuit in this sort of situation, trying to maximize the loop ability, trying to keep Sicily as a point of difference, and trying to maximize my points for the rest of the year. And I'm just hoping that one trade will be enough for a long-term injury, and then I'll be able to make the most out of the rest of it, hoping that there's only 1 or 2 week injuries that Himmelberg can cover. And so here's the beauty of something like a Himmelberg when you have the right structure. So this week and next week, he obviously covers for James Sicily. I do still have, obviously, Johnson in here. It's potentially sharp. Roberts is due back next week, so he might be able to come back as well. Buller, if he gets a game, and I do think he gets games. Burgess at the end of the season, I think, gets games as well. So on any single line, I can cover at any particular time. So let's say when Sicily comes back, for example, all right? So first things first, you can loop Himmelberg. But if you want to loop him forward, you can do that. I can move him forward and I can loop him here and I can take Keys score. I could put Keys as emergency, and if I want to loop, I can switch Himmelberg forward or whatever it may be. But also then if I want to, let's say, loop the ruck, or there's an injury in the ruck, I can now move, Darcy Cameron into the ruck. I can then move Himmelberg onto the field in the forward line as the 6th player. I can then also, I'm going to put him back here. I can then also cover the midfield. So I can have him there and say move Keys or another forward mid into the midfield, and I can cover a midfield injury. So I can cover an injury over all 4 lines with the setup that I have, and that's the reason why I've spent the extra trade to get in a Himmelberg instead of just say keeping Weddle. And it was all planned this way. So I could even now say loop Wines. I can have depending on the games, of course, if you can do it. And I can't do it until Sicily comes back. But push Wines out to M9, put the E on him. If he has an early game, I can have a look at his score, and I can take the score, or I can opt to pass on the score if I need to. And that benefit you can have with this sort of setup. Important that I'm obviously keeping Johnson, and as I said, I do think that Roberts does come back, so there's a potential there to maximise that as well. But I don't mind where my thought process is, and the process is right, the trades is wrong, and I don't have the best available team. So in my opinion, if I had, let's say, for example, instead of Wines and Walsh, or say instead of Wines and Rowell, they're probably the biggest two, I had Brayshaw and Track, or Oliver and Track, or someone like that. Then I would say I'd be competing with the big boys. I'm not upset that I don't have English. I still think that there's an injury coming. I would be absolutely shocked if he goes the entire season without getting injured, but we'll see how that goes. Now, I suppose we move on. So what do we do this week for VCNC? I did go through that on the pod, but this week it's likely that I'm going to be VCing Laird, and the captain's probably going to be Marshall against BJ Williams on the last game of the round, especially now with Yo out. So they've even got a weaker midfield. So Marshall, or potentially even Sinclair, could go really big, but I'm going to back in Marshall against BJ. Laird against North. So here's the one thing. So there's a variety of great VC choices this week. So I'll go through them. So Laird, so Neil and Dunkley on the Thursday night game at the Gabba against Richmond are both shouts for early VC. These games here are the ones. So you got Adelaide versus North and Bulldogs versus Freo. So obviously Bont went 182 or something like that, similar to that against Freo earlier in the year. Do they do something about it this time? It's now at Marvel. So there's every chance that he goes big there, but it's the exact same time as the game of North. And what my thought process is Adelaide Oval. Um, Dawson can go really big, and so can Laird, but Laird just hasn't had that 200 game yet. So I'm leaning towards Laird as a guy that can flat track bully over the top of North and go absolutely massive this week. And I don't think I would take anything less than, say, 135, 140, because there's some great backup captain options. So I know this is at Gold Coast Stadium, so maybe not for Dacos, but Dacos could be a good shout for a captain option. I don't mind. Briggs could also be decent. Like he's actually been really, really good, and it's at To, so that generally will mean some more stoppages, etc. A bit of a slippery ball, less mark kick, more stoppages. So I actually don't mind Briggs this weekend. But obviously the clear standout option, anyone St Kilda versus West Coast, so Sinclair or Marshall, and I think Marshall is just an absolute lock for a 120 plus. So yeah, makes it pretty easy for me really. But there it is, guys. That's how it's sort of all 22 premiums or 23 premiums in there. Um, Obviously it's not the strongest team. It's definitely top 1,000 worthy. Can I make a run for the top 100? That is up in the air. That's what I'd like to do. That's where I hope that my team ends with. Can I do it? Only time will tell. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, how your team's lining up, and we'll go from there. Cheers.